provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
For First at 9, the walkout explained. The governing party moves to expel rumours on their walkout of parliament.
We as the government, we took a decision to boycott the Speaker, Honourable Karu Jayasuriya, for his actions that he's been biased throughout this last 3 weeks.
Attempts to garner support. The United National Party holds a rally in Kandy. Its leader echoes their readiness for an election, but under a legitimate government. Barbaric behaviour. A 19-year-old schoolboy stabbed to death by another schoolboy in Madara. At odds with fossil fuel agenda. A government report warns climate change could cost the US hundreds of billions of dollars and damage human health.
බයික් එකක් ගත්තොත් ෆෝන් එකක්. ඔව් තෝරාගත් Yamaha බයික් මාදිලි සඳහා රුපියල් 40000ක් දක්වා වටිනා ස්මාර්ට් ෆෝන් එකක් නොමිලේ. ඉක්මන් කරන්න නොවැම්බර් 30 දක්වා පමණයි. කොන්දේසි සහිතයි. අමතන්න 0117 696 696 AMW තින් පමණයි.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Eknaika. Now let's start you off with your top story. The governing party today clarified reasons behind their walkout of parliament during its session yesterday. UPFA parliamentarian Kanchana Wijesekara said that it was done in protest of the Speaker's actions over the past few weeks and not in protest of parliamentary sessions as claimed by media reports. MP Wijesekara also insisted that there is no crisis within the country as portrayed by international media.
We would like to categorically deny the reports that were published yesterday and telecasted in some of the media stating that the parliament sittings were boycotted by the ruling government party. We as the government, we took a decision to boycott the Speaker, Honourable Karu Jayasuriya, for his actions that he's been biased throughout this last 3 weeks, being partial to one party and not adhering to the constitution or to the standing orders of the parliament. And also we would like to point out that certain media institutes, not locally but internationally, had been portrayed into the world that there is a crisis within the country. The Honourable Speaker, as well as opposition members of the TNA, the JVP and the UNP, has tried to create a crisis within the parliament to portray to the world that there is a crisis within the country. But we would like to point out that all the administrative sectors within the government are functioning as normal. We haven't seen any people getting onto the streets protesting, demanding for things in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Chain supply of services have been functioning well. All sectors of government functioning well. So there is no crisis within the government or the country, but there is a constitutional crisis. There is a case been heard in the Supreme Court, and as soon as the verdict is been delivered, we are sure we can move forward from the parliament crisis and we can go in for a general elections.
Few days we saw that the rupee is getting depreciated among the US dollar. Yesterday it was like 180.66. So as a government, what are the things that you all are taking among this situation?
About 6 months ago, when the government entered into trade agreements with Singapore, as well as change in the fiscal policies and the monetary policies, those were the things that we said that the rupee might hit the 200 mark by the end of the year. But as a new government, we have managed to stop the rupee from further depreciating. We are making the required fiscal and monetary policy changes within the coming weeks.
Actually, what has happened to this temple crisis? We know that the former Prime Minister is staying there. So, as a government, why don't you take any actions towards this?
We have already requested as government members to send invoice for the time that has been occupied by the previous government, calculate what needs to be paid back to the government, but we will also take legal action if they don't move out of the premises within the next coming weeks.
Now, Minister of Housing and Social Welfare Vimal Weerawansa levelled criticism at the former government as well as JVP leader MP Anura Kumara Dissanayake today. Addressing an event held in Kadawatha, Minister Weerawansa accused MP Anura Kumara Dissanayake for moral duplicity while pointing the finger at the conduct of police under the former regime over a covert military operation. He charged that an operation which was conducted to unearth dormant members of the terror group LTTE was sabotaged by former DIG Nalaka De Silva.
The ceremony, organised to mark the launch of a petition which demands a general election, was worked off in Kadawatha today under the patronage of several ministers and members of parliament. The aim of the exercise is to collect 1 million signatures to the petition to mount pressure backing calls for an election.
We state this with responsibility that we have 4 more MPs than the UNP. Ranil Wickremesinghe, who only had 42 seats in parliament, took oath as the Prime Minister as soon as the President was elected. Anura Kumara Dissanayake did not see it as an immoral act back then. In fact, he saw it quite to the contrary. Ranil Wickremesinghe is now at Temple Trees as he fears that he would be arrested over the bond scam. Is it moral to postpone local authorities' election through various questionable gambits? Let me elaborate on something since it's now out in the open. The Army intelligence found a gradual budding of the LTTE during the last 3.5 years. Our Army created a fake LTT cadre from rehabilitated LTT members. Through that undercover operation, they identified true supporters of the LTTE. They caught them and discovered their connections with the diaspora. The Army intelligence cannot proceed to arrest as it exceeds the powers vested on them. So they handed over the relevant information to the Security Council, following which the operation was handed over to the Terrorist Investigation Division, which was headed by the then DIG Nalaka de Silva. That was similar to the fox being given the run of the chicken coop. In less than a week's time, all the information regarding officers who created the fake LTTE cadre was revealed in a newspaper. We are aware that Namal Kumara made various revelations recently. The IGP was also summoned to record statements, but he failed to appear. We do not know why. I know why, but I do not know how to say why. Now, former Prime Minister and leader of the United National Party, Ranil Wickremesinghe, reiterates that his party is ready to face an election under a legitimate government. The former Premier made the remark at a protest rally held in Kandy today. Before the rally commenced, Wickremesinghe also paid his respects to the chief prelates of the Malwatta and Asgiri chapters.
Earlier in the day today, leader of the UNP, Ranil Wickremesinghe, paid his respects to chief prelate of the Malwatta chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuwa Sri Sumangala Thera at the Malwatta temple. The former Premier then visited the Asgiriya temple to pay his respects to Warakagoda Sri Gnanaratana Thera, the chief prelate of the Asgiri chapter. Following these meetings, MP Wickremesinghe joined with the rest of the UNP parliamentarians and supporters who had gathered in Kandy for a protest. Themed as Public's Vote for Justice, the rally commenced from Suduhunpola in Kandy. Party leaders of the United National Front also participated in the main protest that was held at the city's clock tower.
The President thought that the UNP would divide once he removed Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister. But then the UNP simply got stronger with all these challenges, and we will rally around the President's house and the Presidential Secretariat. The President will be completing 4 years in office by the 9th of January. He came to power with our support, but then realised that he might not get it again, and that is why he turned to Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna for help. I challenged Mahinda Rajapaksa to bring all 30 of his cabinet ministers to Parliament for voting. Forget about the 113 MPs. President Sirisena, we will get some more of your members to our side by next week. Try and stop us if you can. We will establish a major coalition against them under the purview of a board of leaders. We have opened doors for those who want to leave the SLFP. We are the legitimate government. We will not let an election be held without a legitimate government in power. But no matter, we will chase away this group of thieves. Parliamentarian Lakshman Yapa Abewardena says that they are ready to forget about the interim government. This means they're scared. We will not agree to that. It was proven in Parliament yesterday that Sirisena Rajapaksa unity does not hold the majority in the House. We took the vote by name and 121 out of 122 parliamentarians who are on our side cast their votes. The remaining MP was absent as he was unwell. We were able to achieve this result because our Speaker was unflinching. We are ready to face an election, but it should be done under a legitimate government. And the date for an election must be decided with the agreement of all political parties representing the Parliament. They must leave when the Parliament asks them to, but they still try to remain in power. We must prepare ourselves to get rid of them. Leader of the Janata Vimukti Perumna, Anura Kumara Disanayake, alleges that vast sums of money were paid out to politicians to both cross over and to remain faithful to their own parties. Addressing a conference held in Gaul, MP Anura Kumara alleged that sums as exorbitant as 600 million rupees were paid out to buy support of MPs.
A conference organised by the Janata Vimukti Perumna was held under the patronage of its leader Anura Kumara Disanayake in Gaul last evening.
What they did on the last 26th was Mahinda Rajapaksa sat on one side of the table with Maithripala on the other side and named each other the President and the Prime Minister. Behind that government, there's a clear conspiracy. During this short period of time, they proved how uncivilized politics of this country is. Parliamentarians ask how much they're willing to pay from both sides and join the party which pays the most. Some even asked for 600 million rupees. Not only to cross over, they also took money to remain with their own parties. None of these transactions were done through bank accounts. This is black money. In order to develop this country, politics should be made civilized. I agree that the educated should be in politics. Moving on to other local stories, Minister of Hill Country, New Villages, Infrastructure and Community Development, Arumugam Thondaman, warns of a strike action over the daily wage hike demanded by plantation workers. Addressing a media briefing held yesterday, the minister said that they will move for a strike if discussions set for Monday fail to meet their demands. A discussion was held at the Ministry of Finance in the presence of Minister of Labour Gamini Lokuge, the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance and the Workers' Union. They reiterated the fact that the wage should be 600 rupees. Another discussion will be held at the Treasury on the coming Monday, joined by the Workers' Union, officials of the Ministry of Finance and the Minister of Labour. We are preparing for a strike on the coming Monday. Our actions should put pressure on the relevant authorities, including the Workers' Union and the government. The Prime Minister is of the stance that a wage of 1,000 rupees should be given. He got involved in this issue since he is of that stance as well as being the Minister of Finance. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa pledges to revive the tourism industry and transform it into a sector which contributes to the country's economy. The Premier made the pledge during a meeting held with representatives of the tourism sector yesterday who aired their grievances.
The Prime Minister yesterday met with the representatives of the tourism sector to discuss issues they face.
The issue I see here is the tourism industry failing to commit to one particular strategy because a new strategy is implemented every 3 or so years. One strategy should be followed through a period of 5 years. Issues arise because it's not done. The tourism industry is in a very dire situation. This is not a recent trend, but this had been happening for the past 2.5–3 years, especially because of the informal sector. The informal sector has more rooms than the formal sector in the areas of Bentota and Beruala. We were running our hotels with great difficulty.
If you look at the accounts of public quoted companies, their hotels are not doing well, so they are all making losses. Some time now, for the last 1.5 to 2 years, the hotels are not making money. That's why we are asking the Treasury and the government for some policy decisions to be made and to address this industry. This is why it's so urgent. Because we are not making money. It's better to close down the hotels and keep the hotels shut. Because in operation we are running at a loss. A lot of hotels are running at a loss today.
Bentara Beruala, Golden Mile.
Bentara and Beruala are excluded from the Golden Mile tourism zone today. A loss of around 7 billion rupees is incurred within the last 6 months because of this. Some hotels which are closed in this area don't even have the foundation stone laid. Some hotels were closed to be reopened in 2–3 months, but they still haven't opened them. The land should be given to other investors if they are not used. I request attention be paid to this matter.
මේ සංචාරක හෝටල් පවරන්න ඕනේ ඉඩම් ටික පවරන්න.
Now, circling back to the prevailing political situation in the country, a number of protests were organised across the island today, calling for a general election as well as against the conduct of Speaker Karu Jayasuriya. Some protesters also signed petitions in certain areas.
The public in Kalutara signed a petition demanding that a general election be held immediately.
They say that they are fighting for democracy, which is really good. Therefore, we ask them to facilitate an election. People will decide who should rule the country.
In the meantime, another protest march was held in Godakavela, opposing the conduct of Speaker Karu Jayasuriya whilst demanding an election. Meanwhile, a petition was signed at the Ratgama Junction in Galle today, demanding an election under the patronage of UPFA parliamentarian Mohan De Silva. In the meantime, a protest dubbed Protect the Sovereignty of People and Hold the Election was held in Mavanalla. Former Chief Minister of the Sabragamu province and UPFA parliamentarian Tharaka Balasuriya joined the demonstration. Yet another protest was held in Hambantota against the Speaker while demanding an election. A protest titled "Let's Start the Struggle to Save the Motherland" was held in front of the bus stand in Neluva, Galle. In Biagama, protesters signed a petition demanding an election. The protest worked off in Pulgahavela also called for an election. Meanwhile, demonstrations held in front of the Anuradhapura bus stand also opposed the conduct of the Speaker while demanding an election.
Chief of the indigenous community, Uru Arge Vannilatho, laments the calibre of Sri Lanka's politicians. During an audience with a team of intellectuals who called on him yesterday in Dambana, Vannilatho stressed that parliamentarians should remember who voted for them, and it's high time parliamentarians started representing public. It is very difficult to think that the country is governed by a government. This is a serious problem. People are laughing at how lawmakers behave in parliament. Why were they sent there? Is that their culture? They are attacking each other. Those are childish actions. There are 225 members in parliament. One crosses over to this side and another crosses over to the other side. One side says that they have the majority and the other also says the same thing. I don't like to accept such governments. Those 225 were sent there by the general public. Then those people's representatives should represent those who voted for them. It's not only those 225 members of parliament who live in this country. Therefore, this situation should be changed. Now we're going to bring you some tragic scenes. A 19-year-old schoolboy died in Mathura after he was stabbed to death by a fellow student on his way to a tuition class this afternoon. The tragic incident was caught on CCTV, which showed the attackers lying in wait in anticipation of the victim's arrival.
19-year-old Ravindu Gimhana is a student of grade 13 of a leading school in Mathura. He and 3 other students were on their way to a tuition class at around 1:10 in the afternoon today when they were intercepted by a group of 3 students who were awaiting in anticipation of the other group's arrival. The horrific attack was caught on CCTV. It depicts one of the attackers, who is a student of a prominent school in Mathura, attacking Ravindu Gimhana with a knife, during which he was stabbed in the abdomen. As the assailants fled, Ravindu collapsed. Although he was taken to hospital, Ravindu was pronounced dead on arrival. The assailants' escape is also caught on CCTV. Ravindu's friends say that a feud which existed between the assailants and Ravindu's brother led to the incident, and it was done out of revenge. The 3 attackers have been identified and Mathura police have commenced investigations.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, oil prices plunged to their lowest since late 2017 yesterday in choppy trading, weighed down by an emerging crude supply overhang and a darkening economic outlook. To counter bulging supply, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries is expected to start withholding output after a meeting planned for the 6th of December. International benchmark Brent crude oil futures fell to their lowest since December 2017 at $61.52 per barrel before recovering to $62.13. That was 47 cents below their last close. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures slumped to $53.38 a barrel. Prices earlier fell as low as $52.82, only 5 cents above the $52.77 level reached on Tuesday, which was the lowest since October last year. The divergence between U.S. and international crude comes as surging North American supply is clogging the system and depressing prices there, while global markets are somewhat tighter, in part because of reduced exports from Iran due to newly imposed U.S. sanctions. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development had lowered its outlook for next year, highlighting that trade tensions and higher interest rates are slowing the global economy. The OECD forecasts that global growth would slow from 3.7% this year to 3.5% in 2019 and in 2020. It had previously projected 3.7% for next year.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development calculates that a full-blown trade war and the resulting economic uncertainty could knock as much as 0.8% off global gross domestic product by 2021. The OECD, however, left its forecast for the United States in 2018 and 2019 unchanged, projecting growth in the world's biggest economy would slow from nearly 3% this year to slightly more than 2% in 2020 as the impact of tax cuts warned and higher tariffs added to business costs. Trimming its outlook for China, the OECD said that the country's growth would slow from 6.6% to a 30-year low of 6% in 2020 as authorities tried to engineer a soft landing in the face of higher US tariffs. The global growth slowdown would be worst in non-OECD countries, with many emerging market economies like to see capital outflows as the US Federal Reserve gradually raised interest rates. Rising interest rates could also spur financial markets to reconsider and thus reprice the risks to which investors are exposed, triggering a return to volatility.
Now it's time to look at news from around the world. Now, unchecked climate change will cost the United States hundreds of billions of dollars and damage human health and quality of life. The warning comes in the form of a report by the US government where it says future risks from climate change depend on decisions made today. It says climate change is presenting growing challenges to human health and safety, quality of life, and the rate of economic growth. The warning, however, is at odds with the Trump administration's fossil fuels agenda.
A government report issued yesterday warns that climate change will cost the US economy hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century, damaging everything from human health to infrastructure and agricultural production. The congressionally mandated report outlined the projected impacts of global warming in every corner of American society in a dire warning at odds with the Trump administration's pro-fossil fuel agenda. According to the report, with continued growth in emissions at historic rates, annual losses in some economic sectors are projected to reach hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century, more than the current gross domestic product of many US states. It said global warming could disproportionately hurt the poor, broadly undermine human health, damage infrastructure, limit the availability of water, alter coastlines, and boost costs in industries from farming to energy production. Reports stress that projections of further damage could change if greenhouse gas emissions are sharply curbed. It also warned that future risks from climate change depend primarily on decisions made today. Environmental groups said the report reinforced their calls for the United States to take action on climate change. Previous research, including from US government scientists, has also concluded that climate change could have severe economic consequences, including damage to infrastructure, water supplies and agriculture.
Moving on to other stories, Chief of the British Army, General Mark Carlton Smith, is of the view that Russia is a far greater threat to the United Kingdom than the terror group so-called Islamic State. General Carlton Smith also warned against being complacent about the threat posed by the nation led by President Vladimir Putin.
The head of the British Army has made a startling claim that Russia is now a far greater threat to the UK's national security than the Islamic State group. In an interview with the Daily Telegraph, General Mark Carlton Smith said Britain cannot be complacent about the threat Russia poses. He said the Russians seek to exploit vulnerability and weaknesses wherever they detect it. The UK blames Russia for the Salisbury poisoning and several cyber attacks. In March, former Russian spy Sergei Skripal, who sold secrets to MI6, and his daughter Yulia survived being poisoned with Novichok. And in October, the UK government accused Russia's GRU military intelligence service of being behind 4 high-profile cyber attacks on targets including the US Democratic Party and a small TV network in Britain. Russia denies any involvement in the Skripal poisoning and has described cyber attack accusations as a rich fantasy.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
And moving on to your weather forecast for tomorrow, temperatures are to vary between 20 and 29 degrees Celsius, with the highest temperature expected in the coastal areas of the country. Showers or thunder showers will occur in the central, Sabaragamu and Ua provinces and will spread into northwestern, western and southern provinces. Fairly heavy falls of about 75 millimeters can be expected in the central and Sabaragamu provinces, as well as in the districts of Galle and Matara. Misty conditions may also occur at some places in the central and Sabaragamu provinces during the mornings. And here is a look at your city-by-city forecast. And that's all we have from First at 9 tonight. And before we go, we're going to take you to Lyon in France. The city is known for its cuisine and gastronomy, historical and architectural landmarks, part of which is registered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.